Imagine wearing a t-shirt, or displaying a poster, or waving a flag, emblazoned with the face of a brutal killer who openly expressed racist anger at blacks and indigenous people, and undisguised disgust for gays. Well, it's not something you have to imagine. It's done every day. Somewhere on a college campus or at a social justice protest, somebody is celebrating a psychopath. The famous face, of course, belongs to Ernesto Che Guevara. It's one of the most perverse jokes in modern life that so many people, especially young people, exalt him as a hero.
So shut up, bitch! Oh my God!
Imagine
A podcast.
where time drifts slowly,
A podcast.
Where
Isaac.
carries you away.
So let me be clear. We tortured some folks.
Hey, hi, hello, it's Isaac, and welcome to Coexist Inc. There aren't many true believers left in the world today. Lots of people will perform principles. They will tell you they are good, true Christians or communists, but a very cursory glance will tell you it's all just words. So on the eve of what appears to be an American military incursion on the tiny island nation of Cuba, I feel compelled to express my undying love and appreciation and admiration for Ernesto Che Guevara. I know that his image has been tainted over the years by hipster merchandise, but don't let that diminish your appreciation for a recent historical figure who was a principled, true believer. And definitely don't buy a word of those Cuban-American gusanos who try to equate him to fucking Hitler. Che was the real deal. Someone who gave up comfort for principles. On today's episode, I am joined by Ben and Giordano to remind you just how incredible and inspirational Che Guevara is, and how to explain the prevalence of his image in the 2000s. I know a lot of people talk about our ZOG, our Zionist-occupied government, and if you're a listener of the show, you know that while there is a ton of truth in this, I don't think it's quite right. It largely ignores the Cuban-American influence over American politics today, or FAG as I like to call it, Florida Acquired Government. Marco Rubio has made it his mission to destroy the nation of Cuba and the revolution. There are strategic and economic reasons for it, of course, but I think it's mostly born out of a spitefulness. Cuba is a living, breathing example of an alternative to the American empire. That cannot stand. This isn't new. Look at what they did to Haiti since the slave revolt of the 19th century when they overthrew their Western occupiers. Yes, the machine is cold, but it can still be bitter. I'll address all this, Cuba in particular, on an upcoming episode. Also, we'll be discussing Che Guevara's guerrilla tactics in next month's book club, so make sure you sign up for that, and I'll put the details out there soon. Until then, hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you for doing the homework. Appreciate it.
Por supuesto.
Any clip that was an hour or more, I watched about a third of at 3 times speed and then called it. Like that guy, that anti-Cuban author who was testifying before Congress, and like they zoom out and there's 6 people in the room. Like Giordano described him in the chat as histrionic, and I was like, damn, good word, Giordano. I'm proud of you. That's a great one right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, 100%. Just like This guy's a fucking host of a variety show, bringing that like Kramer energy to his anti-communism. Kramer as in Jim Kramer, the stock guy.
Okay.
Also, I
All right.
suppose Kramer of Seinfeld fame.
Yeah, they call him the Cuban Professor Jiang, the way he's talking to nobody in the room. No, that's the guy whose book I read, Umberto Fontava.
Oh, that's him.
That's him. The book, I want to talk. That book was one of the most histrionic books I've ever read. I told you I was flying on a little 9-seater prop jet over the Atlantic towards Miami, and we were hitting some pretty turbulent weather. And I'm reading this book in this plane, and I want to stop because if I die, I don't want this to be the last thing I'm looking at. I thought that I would be sent to some weird limbo. So I think, remember when Christopher Moltisanti says that hell is St. Patrick's Day, with St. Patrick's Day every day in a bar?
I'm going to hell, T. You're not going anyways but home. I crossed over to the other side. You what? I saw the tunnel and the white light. I saw my father in hell. Get the fuck out of here. And the bouncer said that I'd be there too when my time comes. What bouncer? The Emerald Piper. That's our hell. It's an Irish bar where it's St. Patrick's Day every day, forever.
Hell for me is just Miami hanging out with Cuban Americans, you know? So having to, that would be, I feel like I would get stuck in some kind of Cuban bardo, which would be horrible for me.
If you died with that book on you, it would have been pretty definitive proof that you were like an op or something, right? Like, he was a CIA-controlled opposition. You know, he clearly kept this book on him at all moments. He was buried with it. It's
just brushing up, just rereading some of my favorite literature, you know?
Yeah. But I do love the idea that hell for you every day is like, it's like whatever the Cuban equivalent of St. Patrick's Day is at like some Cuban bar in Miami.
Just hearing every single day over and over again, Castro took my family's slaves. Castro took my family's slaves.
When was the last time you guys saw a Che shirt, IRL?
I think it might be like 20 years.
Yeah.
I think you need to go back to the 2000s.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Did you guys ever own a Che shirt or don one personally?
No, I think I had I like one of the first albums I ever bought was a Rage Against the Machine album, and wasn't there one with him potentially? Yeah, but that's as close as I ever had. My brother had a Che poster, I suppose. My brother Josh, but I never had a T-shirt personally.
I didn't, but I had different showy commie T-shirts, which I cringe at in retrospect. I had the hammer and sickle with the CCCP on it. I had one of the Soviet airlines that just said Aeroflot. It also had a hammer and sickle on it. So I was in that sort of ecosystem, and I was a big Rage Against the Machine fan as a teenager, but I never actually got the Che shirt.
I was a Che wearer. I had a Che shirt. It wasn't the classic red. It was black and white with I think Che's handwriting behind it. I can't remember what it even said, but I would wear that in high school. And in fact, I wore that shirt for a superlative that I won senior year of high school. Can you guess what superlative I won?
We don't have those in Canada, so I'm just trying to think of the ones I know. Most likely to succeed is one of them.
Yes,
most likely to be detained by an intelligence service.
That would have been so much cooler than what I really got. I got most individual. And the girl who won it with me, the girl who was also the female equivalent of most individual, because we still did that in high school. You know, this is pre-woke. I can't remember her name, but she was this little froggy redhead who wore tiger ears and a tiger tail to school every single day. And
you were the male equivalent of that.
I was the male equivalent. And for our photo shoot, I wore the Che shirt.
Yeah. Album art, do it.
I
Or is it?
should if I can make that the cover art for this, I will if I can find that picture. But I was a genuine, sincere Che admirer in my teens, like all the libs and PragerU people criticize today. That was me, suburban disaffected youth who glommed on to this figure, and I gotta say, I feel vindicated today. I still
It's amazing.
love
Yeah,
Che.
it's of all the things that like people were into in high school, like everybody else at your school, you laughed because they were all the same, because they all loved Chuck Norris or something, right? And they laughed at you because you were different. And yet, like Che Guevara is so much cooler, like in retrospect, than we could have even known, right? Like we're like, oh yeah, he doesn't like the system, or he hates capitalism or something. It's like I feel most people's knowledge went about that far. And then learning about him, you're like, damn, this guy might have been like one of the most selfless ideologues I've ever seen in my life.
And I don't tolerate the besmirching of Che. And so living in Florida, you have to deal with that a lot. But I loved Che and Latin American Revolution so much that right after high school, right after I took that picture of Most Individual, I would go on to live in Nicaragua for about a year, inspired by the Sandinistas, and eventually I would live in Cuba for a few months, in 2014, and would love to go back. Very sad I didn't manage to finagle a ticket to that flotilla, that my rival, my nemesis Hassan, went on. Um Che Guevara had a big moment in the 2000s, and so I figured who better to talk about Che Guevara, the icon, than the Shuffle Boys. So, Giordano, Ben, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having us. I'm very jealous of you for having gotten to go to Cuba. Giordano's been too. I have never been, and I'm Canadian. Like, I can with relative ease. And I never got there over the course of my adult life. And I don't know how much longer the Cuba we know and love is going to be with us if current trends continue. So, big missed opportunity.
It's crazy. Like, so I went there to see the Rolling Stones in like 2016.
Wow.
Because they were having like a free show, and it is wild to see a society in which like money is not like the primary motivator for many things, right? Like it's the only country I've seen where people just like regularly will hitchhike still, because it's like, well, I'm not trying to like get ahead or something, or like they don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of this is. There's a lot of stuff too where you're like, I'm not sure if this is because of the embargo as well. Like they don't have any GMO foods over there. They also like, you don't realize it's like you can just drive a car from like 70 years ago if you take care of it and like repair it.
They very much pride themselves on their resourcefulness. I do recall the first time I got into one of those old Chevys and I shut the door. The taxi driver was like "Suave," because I like closed the door too hard. He's like, so in Cuba, you like very close, gently push it shut. You don't slam
Mhm.
the door shut because, yeah, they have to stretch everything. They have to make it last. And my experience in Cuba only furthered my love for the revolution, for Che, for Fidel, for the Cuban people. They were quite possibly the nicest, most generous people that I've ever met. I recall I was playing basketball there. I went there initially to Cuba to do a story about the medical tourism industry because a friend of mine was getting emergency back surgery, total Hail Mary, didn't have health insurance. This is before the ACA and all this stuff. And he just flew to Cuba and got off the plane and was immediately met by a little guy with a smoky voice named Ramon, who just said, "Do you need to go see a doctor?" And
Mm.
immediately took him to see a doctor, and they fixed his back. He had, like, fusion back surgery with old Soviet gear, and it fixed him, and I went with him to his return to get the drill bits out of his spine because in America, they didn't have the correct screws. They're like, "Oh, yeah, we don't have the bit for this to get
Mm.
the screw out of your back, so you gotta go back to Cuba." Uh, but they were the most generous people. I remember I would try to buy them dinner and just I like, "I have the money to play with, like, let me get you stuff," and they would outright refuse anything. They're like, "No, you are our guest.
like we're taking care of you. And I was just, it was the exact opposite of like, not that it's their fault, but when in India, like nobody's your friend. Everybody's trying to hustle you when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those other countries that, yeah, you're like a target, you are their livelihood. I get it. But in Cuba, there was none of that, zero of that. So yeah, again, I have nothing but great things to say. And I've been wanting to do a Cuba episode. And so, yeah, I want to talk about this Che Renaissance in the 2000s, the t-shirt, the merch, the movies, and why he had this moment in the 2000s. But first, we should talk about who Che Guevara is. I feel like there are several versions of him out there. Most of it is apocryphal, and perhaps even my romanticization of him is apocryphal. He is credited with saying his final words, which I love, before he was executed in 1967 in Bolivia. He says, "Go ahead and shoot. You're only killing a man." I always thought that that was one of the most badass things you could possibly say before you die. But the Che's, the anti-Castros, the Cuban Americans, they like to say that no, he died a coward and begged for his life. And we don't really know for certain what it was he actually said, because we're basing it on the reporting of CIA agents, Felix Rodriguez. I mean, who to trust? So a lot of it is like what you want to believe, and I guess you can kind of extrapolate based on the life that he lived that this is what he would have said, because he, like Giordano said, he was like a purist. He was a genuine dyed-in-the-wool ideologue who lived a principled life. So you would assume he died the same way, or at least I want to. Yeah, you never see, like the idea that like everybody knows, he joined Fidel and he did the revolution in Cuba to the point that like he had become the ruling class, and then to leave and go do it and then like go live and sleep in the mud and the rain every night again so you could do it in another country is like truly remarkable. Like you almost never see that kind of behavior in anyone.
Yeah, that guy Umberto Fontava, who wrote the book Useful Idiots, which is about the people who valorize Che, he does this sort of schizophrenic reinterpretation of Che Guevara that makes no sense. He'll say he loved the he was a yes, he said he was a communist, but he stole like the biggest, fanciest mansion in Cuba and was actually quite lazy and loved to indulge in things. But then he was also like an idiot who left that for a revolution in Congo and in Bolivia. And the criticisms contradict each other, because it's just like, well, which one was he exactly?
I noticed those PragerU videos you sent us, which were very enlightening, by the way. They actually used Marxist terms to like criticize communism. So they were saying that like, in like bourgeois liberalism, the bourgeois are the ones who like capture the rent from owning, society, from being the ruling class. And essentially what they were arguing was that like communists, they just want to take that position from the bourgeois, right? Like they don't actually want things to be egalitarian. They just want to take the ruling class position from the bourgeois. But I'm like, if this is an anti-Che video, I mean, this is like the one guy you probably are like, this is one of the guys you cannot level this against, because this is a guy who left being the ruling class to go do this in another country, right? To like start from the bottom again. With the intention, by the way, of if it was successful, going to do it again somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. In a couple countries, right? Because he didn't just go to Bolivia; he also went to Congo.
He went to Congo prior, which was he admits himself in the book Congo Diaries was a story of failure, that he failed largely because he was an ambitious guy. I think that he didn't understand we should level some criticism at some point, but I don't think because he was so highly principled, I don't think he understood the mind of other people who are just not so principled. And I think he expected the best out of people. I really think that in that regard, he was this incredible humanitarian, because he thought that we were all greater than the sum of our parts, that could transcend, but it turns out that might not be so true. But yeah, you have like these different versions of Che. You have the criticism of him that he's a murderer. Actually, he's actually. Did you know that by wearing that Che T-shirt, you're basically like wearing Hitler? I love when they make that comparison. That he was a murderer, he was a racist, he was a homophobe, which is so funny for like conservatives to level at somebody.
Yeah, you care so much about homophobia. PragerU. Shut the fuck up.
And all three of those criticisms of Che can be pretty easily dismissed. First, the racist one. Yes, in his motorcycle diaries,
they found his racist tweets.
Yeah, kind of actually. That's actually a good way of putting it. He's like 24 at the time, and he does level some criticisms at the black population in South America. But it is the most anodyne, like racist comment possible by today's standards. They also called him a homophobe because he, I guess, once called gay people perverts, which is just like, some of them like that, so that's not entirely incorrect. But also, they said that he created these concentration camps, or these forced labor camps in Cuba called UMAPs, that if you couldn't serve in the army, you would go have to serve in these forced labor camps and do agricultural work or whatever labor they needed. Now, Che may have designed them initially, but by the time that they were doing a little bit of homophobia, Che was long gone. He had left the country. He had nothing to do with that. And Fidel Castro actually, in hindsight, apologized for it, saying that was on me, and we shouldn't have done that, which is like incredible for any leader to ever apologize for. And then, of course, the murderer is Che the murderer, which.
And like, yeah, Clinton was doing Don't Ask, Don't Tell like as late as the 90s, right? Like, it's not like this is something unique to communism. It has like a unique homophobia, you know?
Right. And now Cuba will actually give you provides free care to its trans citizens, no questions asked. So that's how far they've come. The murderer one is always the funniest one, which is
that
oftentimes
was so funny because their argument is like he should have done his revolution without killing anyone. That was wrong. Good luck.
Also, like one of those stupid PragerU videos quotes the Black Book of Communism, which a lot of people have pointed out really inflates the numbers. Like, I think every Nazi soldier killed on the Eastern Front is put in the tally of the victims of communism. And like, good.
In the latest, the updated version of the victims of communism, they included everyone who died from COVID because it was the China flu and they're communists.
Wow. So like, obviously these numbers are like crazy. And I remember like one of these PragerU videos put the number, and it's just not that high. And this is something I half remember from Blowback. I don't really have a fact check offhand, but like I am pretty sure that the 8 years of the Batista dictatorship killed more people than the communist government over 60 fucking years by a lot. It's not close.
I think that the number post-revolution is around 500 that they executed and they held. But the critics call it a mock trial, but they actually held trials, and they let a lot of people off. I mean, the people were baying for blood, and Castro didn't give them as much blood as they wanted. Che is they credit Che, this website called Cuba Archives, which seems very official, with 216 murders, quote unquote. But that YouTube channel, Bad Empanada, does a great job of actually looking into this information and looking at these sources. And you can completely wave away this accusation of quote unquote murderer. And we'll talk about one of the executions that is shown in the movie, the Steven Soderbergh movie Che, which I had Ben and Jordana watch, which is a part of this 2000s renaissance for Che. But most people only know of Che the icon, which is Che the image. I think it is, I think, considered one of the most reproduced photographs, images distributed throughout the 20th century and therefore history. It is such an iconic image that everyone immediately recognizes, but maybe they don't know who he is. They don't know who he is. I mean, let's be real. Most people don't exactly know about Che, but the image proliferated so much that it kind of moved Che into a different category as a symbol instead of as a figure. And it has an interesting history. So the photo of Che was taken in 1960 by a Cuban photographer named Alberto Corda. And he took this photo at a memorial of the La Coubre disaster, which was a Belgian ship or French ship that was docked in the port of Havana, which blew up and killed over 100 people. And it is most certainly an instance of CIA terrorist sabotage. On March 4th, 1960, the sabotage of the La Coubre led to 100 deaths, among them 6 French members of the ship's crew, more than 200 injured, and many victims whose bodies were never found. The material damage was estimated at then approximately 17 million. Now, the complete file of the investigation of the French CGT shipping company into the sabotage, which was attributed to the CIA, is being held in a strongbox of a French maritime foundation with a 150-year restriction on its release set by the legal counsel of the vessel's last owners. So the French company had U.S. divers do a forensic investigation to see, like, well, what actually happened. The Cubans believe, I think with great reason, with great cause, that it was the CIA that murdered these people. And the descriptions and imagery that came out of this disaster are quite horrific. I mean, these people were just torn to shreds. They said there were just limbs and body parts everywhere, that people were fragmented, is the way I heard it described. And this photo was at the memorial when Che just stood on the stage for a moment and this photographer captured it. And this was in 1960. And it wouldn't be until Che's death, actually, or right preceding Che's death, that this photo would make it to the world. And it was in a magazine called Paris Match, which is a French magazine. And it was asked the question, where is Che? And they didn't know at the time that he was about to be executed in Bolivia. But after his execution, this image proliferated. And it was especially proliferated because of an artist named Jim Kirkpatrick, this Irish artist who had met Che in his teens. He made that now famous silk print of this photograph. And this happened in 1967. So 1968, you had all of these, basically these mini revolutions. Right? 1968 is known as that year of revolt. And his image was seen everywhere on posters. He wasn't on a T-shirt quite yet. They hadn't quite
mastered the technology. Yeah.
Yes. But what was interesting was that it was actually kind of revolutionary. The image was within the spirit of Che, because Jim Kirkpatrick said, no copyright. This is free use. Everyone can use it, which I think led to its proliferation. You couldn't copyright it. Everyone was free to use this image, which I think is pretty cool, and I think was part of the reason why it became popular too. But there is also just something evocative about that image. What does it make you guys feel?
Well, I feel like if you know any of the backstory at all of the Cuban Revolution, that these guys were out there in the jungle, in the mountains, in this rural part of the country, and they all agreed to not shave their beards until they got the revolution done. You know, the beard is part of the iconic Cuban revolutionary image. And you see he's like staring off and he's got his like long beard. He still looks the part, even though it's long after, or not that long after, even though it's like a year after they've taken Havana or whatever. He's still sporting the image of like his roots of where he came from, of just like literally dozens of guys doing something incredible in this very romantic kind of feat that they did.
Yeah, I agree. I think his like looking up is part of what makes it maybe like inherently optimistic that people like, especially, I mean, I can only really speak to the 2000s, but I mean, on our show, we've talked a lot about how, like, politically speaking, I mean, this decade is horrible, right? Like there's nothing you can even cling to until like Obama, and even that ends up horrible. And so I think the idea of like someone who was just like an ideologue and fought, even if it meant losing, and with this sort of like optimistic look, was very attractive to people. And he's handsome,
Oh,
which doesn't. I think
he's so
Fidel,
good
I think, had an
looking.
eye for. We were talking about this, because there's another guy who's not Fidel or Che who's even more handsome that they hang out with, who's in that Steven Soderbergh movie.
Camilo Cienfuegos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, his beard is
So,
just beautiful. He's got an incredible beard. He was the bearded one. Chase was
mm,
very patchy, which is interesting. I think that maybe I don't know. Maybe that's part of his Irish heritage. I know some of those Irish guys have patchiness.
he's Irish American.
His
Oh
last name is
no.
actually no, not Irish American, Irish. Yeah, his family fled, I think, Galloway in 1880 to Argentina, and his
Wow.
father said that in
What
my
did I
son,
say? Irish American.
yeah, in my son's blood, is the heart or the blood of an Irish Republican. So
Mhm.
like Ireland takes great pride in him, actually.
If he could have
Yep.
just lived a little longer, Che taking part in the Troubles, joining the IRA.
Oh, that would have been so cool.
Fucking
Oh my
sick,
God.
dude. Fuck. Actually, Isaac, cut that. I don't want anyone Zuckerberging me out of that idea. I got a screenplay I got to write, okay?
The image is in. It's got that Mona Lisa style quality to it, right? I mean, there's this mysteriousness to it. He is decontextualized in that image. You don't know what it means or who he is if you just see it, but there is something in the spirit of rebellion. I think you're right. There is the long hair. There is the beard. I do think that the fact that he is an incredibly handsome guy. Do you imagine it working with someone less handsome? I don't know. It's hard to.
Mhm.
The screen printing as a medium too, isn't screen printing meant to be kind of street art in nature? Like I think that the medium also is congruent with like the type of folk figure that he is.
Because I saw the screen printing far before I ever saw the photo. When I saw the photo, it was almost jarring because it's like slightly different. And burned in my brain, the image of Che is the black and red screen printing.
Right.
Now that would quickly that the 1960s would turn into the paranoia of the 1970s, and I think in '73, an artist named Gerard Malanga did a Warhol style screen printing of Che and sold it to a buyer. And Warhol did something very funny where it was a forgery, but then Warhol said, "No, I actually did it."
Hell yeah.
But it is funny that Warhol basically stole this style of art from Jim Fitzpatrick. That the screen printing of an icon that we know Warhol became very famous for, he just stole from someone else, which is like very typical Warhol thing to do. Like, I fucking hate Andy Warhol.
Isaac coming in with the Philistine dad takes. It's just soup. It's just soup over and over again. I could do this.
I've only heard that about Jackson Pollock, who, by the way, was a CIA asset.
Really?
Yes, yeah, the CIA used abstract conceptual art to fuck up the people's minds. Basically, that's a whole other
It wasn't
episode.
for money laundering. It was for psychological
No, it
purposes.
was for psychological purposes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's a whole other conversation we can have.
That's an awesome take. I want to hear more of. It's like, I hate this contemporary abstract art. It's just tied up with the deep state, you know?
Anytime I don't get art, I'm like, that's CIA.
And you'd probably be right.
Yeah, I mean, they have such a bad track record. Isaac, you were just on our show to talk about Nelson Mandela, and it's like this guy that is like universally beloved. It's like, oh yeah, the CIA is partly responsible. I mean, they are responsible for giving information that led to his capture, right? Like, they're just so bad at picking the right thing to do. Like, especially, I mean, at all times, but in the '60s, I mean, they just got a string of losers, in their decision making.
Oh, especially especially as it regards to Cuba and the constant botching of assassination attempts of Fidel Castro, which are
Yeah.
so harebrained and so crazy, including like putting acid in his cigar so that when he smokes, he starts tripping during a speech.
He
Uh,
loses aura. Yeah.
yeah, putting something in his food that's supposed to uh make his beard dissolve and get all patchy so he's not
Looney
so
Tune
virile.
shit.
It's Looney Tune shit. And then when my favorite stories are the ones where they actually got some like honeypot situation there. I forgot the woman's name, but she was a lover of Fidel Castro and she was a CIA agent, and they sent her there with instructions to murder him. And Fidel was in a hotel room with her and he kind of sussed it out. And apparently, according to her, she reports this, he says, "Have you come here to kill me?" And then he hands her a loaded gun and says, "Go ahead." And they make love instead, which is like the aura, and we will talk about this, that like, and this is where like I feel like modern leftism fails because we're annoying and ugly. The Cubans were so fucking cool looking, and I think Che embodied it the most. Um, Okay, back to the image of Che, the icon of Che. The 80s seemed largely empty of Che iconography. I could not find any instances of Che in any movement, and I wonder why that might be. Perhaps it's the waning of the Cold War. Uh, Perhaps Reaganism just was. What was the countervailing force to Reaganism? The countervailing imagery to Reaganism? I don't know.
I mean, he just kept winning, right?
Yeah.
I think the problem is like there wasn't one.
Punk
All the
music.
boomers sold out and the Gen X were not grown up yet, just quite yet, until the late 80s.
Well, and in the 90s, things started to change a little bit, and it's Shepard Fairey, the street artist, who is now most famous for the Obama Hope poster, which is in itself an homage to the Jim Fitzpatrick image. Shepard Fairey, he did a 1997 parody where he swapped Che's face with Andre the Giant's in his Obey Giant campaign. And he claimed he was criticizing how icons become empty signifiers, which is fucking rich coming from this guy.
Yeah, I never realized that famous like Obey Andre the Giant face was inspired by Che, but of course it is. It's like the exact same pose.
And he would use Che here and there throughout his art, and of course, the Hope Obama poster, which I want to get. We definitely
gonna. You can shoot me, but you will only be killing a man.
I wonder what Obama's last words be. I think that's something to consider. And this begins, I think, the next sort of begins the Che Renaissance, and this is where we hit the 2000s. Now, the first instance of Che being used commercially I could find was a Jean-Paul Gaultier 1999 sunglasses campaign in which he surrealistically reimagined Che in a Fred Langlais drawing imitating murals, placing him next to Frida Kahlo. And Gaultier started using Che iconography in his shows at that period of time. One was a model wore a black beret and carried a cigar. And then in 2002 in Sao Paulo Fashion Week, Giselle wore a bikini covered in Che's prints. And so you started seeing this early in the 2000s of celebrities donning Che attire. You had Elizabeth Hurley, you had Prince Harry, but my favorite instance of Che being reappropriated in the 2000s was Jay-Z, who, by the way, I am an avid Jay-Z hater.
Okay.
I can't stand him. But in a 2003 song, public service announcement, he rapped, "I'm like Che Guevara with bling on. I'm complex."
I'm like Che Guevara with bling on. I'm complex. I never claimed to have wings on.
Now, when asked about why he did this, he was wearing a Che shirt for his first MTV Unplugged appearance. He says he wrote the second verse, which is the Che one, with the lyrics, "I'm like Che Guevara with bling on, I'm complex," as a response to a journalist. When someone asked me at the time of the Unplugged show why it was that I wore the Che t-shirt, I said something glib like, "I consider myself a revolutionary because I'm a self-made millionaire in a racist society." But it was really that it just felt right to me. This is Jay-Z, by the way. I knew that people would have questions. Some people in the hip-hop world were surprised by it. There are rappers like Public Enemy and Dead Prez who have always been explicitly revolutionary, but I wasn't one of them. I also wasn't a Marxist like Che. The Platinum Jesus piece made that pretty clear. Later, I would read more about Guevara and discover similarities in our lives. I related to him as a kid who had asthma and played sports. I related to the power of his image too. The image on the t-shirt had a name, Guerrillo Hererico, heroic guerrilla. The photo was taken after the Cuban Revolution. By the time I wore the t-shirt, it was probably one of the most famous photographs in the world. Like a lot of people who stumble across the image with no context, I was still struck by its power and charisma, which I think is a very interesting thing. Like he saw it decontextualized and still glommed onto its rebelliousness.
Right.
He goes on to say, for any image or symbol or creative act to mean something, it has to touch something deeper, connect to something true. I know that the spirit of struggle and insurgency was woven into the lives of the people I grew up with in Bed-Stuy, even if sometimes fucked up and corrupted ways. Che's failures were bloody and his contradictions frustrating. Okay, here he goes, doing the lib shit. But to have contradictions, especially when you're fighting for your life, is human. And to wear the Che shirt and platinum diamonds together is honest. In the end, I wore it because I meant it. So he hints at some things that I think are interesting, but also says a lot of fucking nothing there too. Completely devoid of politics, it seems. Again, it's an aesthetic choice, right? It's a contrasting of vibes more than it is an actual understanding of politics.
Yeah, and no mention of Fidel visiting Harlem in the 1960s, like a very significant moment in the African American history of New York. I think Che was there too on that mission.
Che did visit, yes. Che spoke at the UN and has some really great moments there, just yelling at the other Latin American leaders who had completely sold out to the great devil itself, the great Satan. But what I find interesting about this, and now we'll get into the homework I made you guys do, is that this is all happening kind of simultaneously. There's this sort of like rhizomatic Che moment in the 2000s, and I think they're great. The greatest examples are the two movies, The Motorcycle Diaries in 2004, and then Steven Soderbergh's Che in 2008. I do think that when I try to reflect back on my love for Che, I do think it was born out of the 2004 Motorcycle Diaries. It as propaganda, it totally fucking worked on me, and I was so smitten with him and his story that maybe informed my politics to this day.
It's so good. Yeah. It rocks. It's I think better than the Steven Soderbergh movie for me. It's certainly shorter. And it really just hits so many great beats. I guess we could do a quick plot summary.
Let's do it.
Che Guevara, he is an Argentinian. He is in medical school, and he's about to embark on a road trip with his friend. I think their plan is to make it to the United States with a sort of rinky-dink motorcycle.
No, Venezuela. Tip of Venezuela.
Really? Okay. Because at one point, shortly into the trip, he stops.
That's as far as they made it, but they did have a plan to go to the United States. They wanted to see all of America was the plan.
Right.
But okay. Not to be like a nerd about this, but like
I know.
You
they can get
can't
off the bike.
drive. You can't. Yeah. There's a big gap in the road. You can't make it there.
The Darien Gap. Yeah. I think his plan was probably to get a different bike, or they were going to figure it out as they went. They're 24 years old. I don't think they had really thought it through. And so they're two young men. His friend is also I think he's in pharmacy school technically, but they're going to take this road trip up South America, starting in Argentina, and they're sleeping outside. They're trying to have sex with random girls in these small towns they go through. Some absolutely beautiful shots of Argentina. You forget that they have their own Rocky Mountains down there.
Yeah.
And that part, but then you see halfway through the movie, they go from a lot of situations where, yeah, they're doing typical 25-year-old stuff. They're trying to have sex. They're, being rascals. And then Che gets radicalized by meeting a Peruvian miner, right? Or a Bolivian miner.
It was in Peru, yeah. Or
Peruvian
it was
miner.
Peru, yeah.
And you can see how much like the injustice affects, because like all of these Latin American countries have similar issues at the same time, which is like there are American companies that are dictating like how these countries should be run, which is like an injustice, right? Like people should get to at least decide what happens to their own country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this beautiful moment, like this girl that Che has sort of developed a relationship with has given him $15 American to buy a bikini if he ever makes it to America. And his friend is begging him to spend the money, for weeks, because it's like he's dying. He's having an asthma attack. They're starving. They're sick. They have got pneumonia, and he will not spend
breaks
the money.
down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he's like, no, like I promised her I would buy her a bathing suit. And then one day his friend is like, I need the money. I need to have sex with the sex worker. And Che's like, I gave it to the miners. I don't have it. It's such a really beautiful moment of his radicalization.
What I love most about this movie is that it is, I think, very subtle, and it is not ham-fisted in showing his radicalization, because he's young. He's 24 years old on a road trip with his friend, and he just sees more and more of this massive continent. And at first, in the early part of the film, we see these feuds between, Argentinians and Chileans. They don't like each other. They get chased out of town. This kind of parochial nationalism. And then as he moves up, he sees that we are kind of all the same. He sees the ruins of Machu Picchu, and he gets a sense for the length of history of Latin America. And if this were like a worse American movie, a biopic of someone who did something, they would be way more ham-fisted about it. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that Russell Crowe movie.
Mel Gibson, The Patriot.
Yeah, Mel Gibson, The Patriot. Right. Yeah. Where like points towards the Civil War ahead of time or whatever. In that Russell Crowe movie about the math guy who went crazy, he like developed game theory, and they can't help themselves. They have to show he's at a bar talking about picking up women. And he's like, gentlemen, you need to think about the theory of the game we're playing. I'm paraphrasing, but barely, right? We're like, at no point in this film does Che come out there and say, like, we need a revolution to right these social ills. Like, it is far more like thoughtful and subtle than that. And it does a lot with showing rather than telling, and having him outright say these things. It's also just fucking beautiful for the shots of South America.
Roger Ebert disagrees with both of you guys. I found his review of the Motorcycle Diaries, which he gave 2.5 stars. If Ernesto had not become Che Guevara and inspired countless t-shirts, there would be no reason to tell this story, which is interesting in the manner of a travelogue, but simplistic as a study of Che's political conversion. It belongs to the dead-end literary genre in which youthful adventures are described, and then that young man grew up to be Benjamin Franklin, Einstein, Rod Stewart, etc. I don't know why you picked Rod Stewart.
One of these things is not like the other, my friend.
Ebert goes on to say, Che Guevara makes a convenient folk hero for those who have not looked very closely into his actual philosophy, which was repressive and authoritarian. Like his friend Fidel Castro, he was a right-winger described as a communist, which is, again, like, that is like the...
I didn't know that.
But that is also just like, everything about that is wrong. We'll get into that later. He said he loved the people, but did not love their freedom of speech, their freedom to dissent, or their civil liberties. Cuba has turned out more or less as he would have wanted it to. So he goes on to just say that, there's not enough character development, the friendship's not convincing, the conversations are bad, blah, 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 blah. Roger, sometimes I like what you have to say, but I wish Siskel was around to correct you on this review.
Wouldn't he have been in 2004?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. But where were you, Siskel? That movie, not only did they choose Gael Garcia Bernal, who was also a very handsome man. I will say in both movies, they choose very handsome guys to play a very handsome Che. which I think is very important. Gael Garcia Bernal is gorgeous in this movie, and the instances that really tugged at my heartstrings when he swims across the Amazon to go stay with the lepers. It's just like, how can you not be like, he actually did that in the middle? Can you imagine in the middle of the night in the fucking Amazon? Crazy, right? As an
when
asthmatic,
everyone who lives there is telling you like, no, you'll almost certainly die. Like
right.
there's piranhas in there and like,
And he has asthma, right? Like,
right.
both
He could get
of
an
these
attack.
films make a big deal about the fact that he has asthma.
And I like that there aren't ham-fisted politics in the Motorcycle Diaries. I probably, when I watched that movie, I had no idea what the fuck a communist was. I still don't really know, but that movie didn't need politics. It only needed to point out that injustice in the world is wrong, and that there are people who are willing to stand up against it. And that was enough for me to get totally hooked into this idea of Che. And since then, I continue to just only love this man. The more I learn about him, even in spite of all of his flaws.
Yeah, I think like the fact that he was a doctor even before becoming political is very like in line with some of the strengths I see in Cuba, where, you know, like they might be under embargo, but like you see in them an example of a society where like there are no limits on the number of doctors that you create, right? Like this is sort of an artificial scarcity that we create for ourselves in like access to medical care. Like if Cuba can do it, like certainly if Cuba can not only do it, but like export them to disasters, like certainly we are capable of creating more doctors, right? But like we have this scarcity that we like to keep. And so, you know, it's nice to see that like these like real skills that he has, right? He is a like inherently useful person. Um, like as he was going up South America, these are, you know, he can just give people medical care wherever he goes. But then also in the revolution, it's very helpful, you know, to be a doctor and to use it to like win over the hearts and minds of the people who may have not have seen a doctor in a while.
Although, as we'll see in the movie, in the Steven Soderbergh Che, saving some poor peasants' children wasn't enough for them to turn on Che in the end. But yeah, I think that, again, the beauty of this movie for me is that it is a great entry point to young people who I think all want a moral, principled, guiding figure to lead us through what we all know is an incredibly fucked up world. And I think Che provides that for us in this movie and in the subsequent one as well, which is obviously a lot more tragic. I think that Steven Soderbergh's Che, and it shows the end of Che, and it's a very depressing movie, I think, to watch in the end.
For sure. I mean, and one more note on the Motorcycle Diaries. I found one of the most affecting scenes of the movie was right at the end when, you know, his friend has been on the same trip as him and is like largely in his position. But his friend is like, oh, I just got accepted to medical school is it Venezuela?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to go and grow up and get a regular job and be a normal guy, right? And Che is like, well, you know, I'm changed, right? Like I can't do that anymore. I'm going to Guatemala, right? To like, and I thought that was a very powerful scene because, you know, for most people, like it just makes what his friend's doing, like it's so pathetic and like lame in a way, but also it's like the decision that 99% of us are going to make. Right. And so it really like puts you in that position of looking at Che and seeing someone who is like maybe profoundly different from you and like making him seem like a figure that is worthy of making a biopic about.
Yeah.
Well, next is 2008 Che, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Now, what's interesting about this movie in terms of its production is that it's based on John Lee Anderson's Che, A Revolutionary Life, which came out in 1997. Now, this book is considered like the Che biography, and in fact, was responsible for finding Che's remains and bringing them back to Cuba. Like, that's how significant this book was. And John Lee Anderson's politics aren't, he's no communist, let's put it that way, but he does portray Che in a way that I remember there was this girl I was seeing who was trying to be a CIA agent, and she read Che, and she's like, actually, Che's kind of awesome. And I was like,
Nice.
yeah. So I think if anyone pays enough attention to Che, no matter what their politics are, they do have to begrudgingly respect the guy. This movie was optioned almost immediately after it came out by Benicio del Toro and another producer. And initially, Terrence Malick was supposed to direct it.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrence Malick was actually in Bolivia in 1966 and had been working on doing some movie about Che for years, but the financing didn't come through, and so Steven Soderbergh would end up jumping on it. And it would take many years for them to make, obviously. And I think it was filmed in 2007, came out in 2008, which is a big year, I think, for revolutions or what remains of the revolutionary ideal. This movie faced similar criticism, but let's also do a little summary of Steven Soderbergh's Che, which is 4.5 hours long. So again, thank you for spending your time doing homework.
I'm not gonna lie, I only saw the first half. I only saw part one. I'm sorry. That's all I had in me.
You saw the happy half then.
Yeah.
They're interesting movies because part two is a reflection of part one, I find, in many ways, right? Where like they're hitting the same beats, but it has a different outcome, right? And so like you see that the struggle, to me, it was like there's actually a lot of similarities in some ways in like this what he went through in Cuba with what he went through in Bolivia. It's just like it didn't end up the same way, right? Like they didn't enjoy the same kind of popular support, maybe. Um, but yeah, I thought that it was really good. I mean, they do such a good job of slowly building momentum. Like you really see this project from the beginning, and there's no montage, right? Where they're like they play a song and they're training and getting better. It's like no, you just watch over the course of 2.5 hours as they become like slightly more put together. Isaac and I watched this one together. And it blew my mind because I was like, think about how hard it is, like, just to go camping for a week. Like, you need to prepare ahead of time, like, pack food. It's like, now, not only are you, like, camping indefinitely, but also, like, people are trying to kill you. And you're pulling off, like, military maneuvers.
Yeah. The film is also told with this framing device where there are scenes in black and white that are Che going to the United Nations in 1962. So like 3 years after the revolution. Those are some really great scenes. He drops some fire lines. He's being interviewed. It kind of gets into, I think it's kind of gesturing towards Che as global symbol, right? Everybody wants to talk to him when he's in New York. And this is interspersed with the very humble beginnings of the Cuban Revolution in the mountains and the struggle that they did very slowly. There are so many scenes in this film of Che shaking people's hands and remembering their names. They really want to hit this note that, like, this is a selfless man of the people, God damn it. And he remembers every fucking name.
Yeah, I'm so bad at remembering names. I'm never going to be a revolutionary. Oh, hey, guy. What's up, buddy?
Oh, that's where you got to bust out Big Dog. Just make everyone's day.
That's what Trump does. He's like, hey, look at this guy. Look at this big guy. That's all he has to do. And people are smitten when he calls him big guy. Yeah, so the first half of the movie starts with Fidel meeting Che in Mexico after Che had witnessed the overthrow of Arbenz in Guatemala. And
horrible story, Guatemala. Just quick side note to mention, like one of the many instances, like in our constellation of injustice throughout the Americas by like either the CIA or the American government at large, to always with being able to say, well, listen, we were trying to stop communism, which is why I mean, in the case of Guatemala, it was literally just that like they did not want the United Fruit Company determining like how their country was run. Right? Like when the CIA began to oppose them, they weren't even attached to the Soviets at all. It was just like, like there's this foreign company who's dictating what like our prices should be. and like what our like wage is should be. And we
Mhm.
don't like that. They're like, that's actually communist, so we're
Yeah,
sending death
yeah.
squads. Yeah.
How dare you attempt land reform? Keep the land the same way it's been since colonial times, God damn it. We
Yes,
need
yes.
bananas.
Communism is when you don't want to be a banana slave. That's what communism
Yeah,
is.
right. You don't understand. These are part of a balanced breakfast back home.
Actually, very high glycemic indexes. You should only eat bananas if you are an athlete. They're not healthy for you.
No, you're ruining all these great foods for me. You told me oatmeal has a high glycemic index. Now bananas have a. God, there's nothing I can eat.
Blueberries.
Yeah. Okay.
Superfood. And
Not made of money here, Isaac.
frozen blueberries are very cheap, my friend. You just have to get those. So he meets Fidel in Mexico, and they plot the July 26th revolution, and it's actually a very fun on the ground retelling of this ragtag group of guerrillas in the Sierra Maestra, winning battles and eventually overthrowing the evil, corrupt Batista regime and taking
How many at the
power.
beginning when they first arrived from Mexico? What is there, like 12 guys?
81 arrived on the Granma, and then I think only 12 or 11 or 12 survived. And Fidel and Che were two of the surviving bunch, which is again like a real twist of fate there. I mean, like they could have easily died.
Yeah,
And,
no wonder the CIA thought they could do the Bay of Pigs. They were like, oh, well, look, these guys showed up with 12 guys and did it,
exactly.
you know?
They shouldn't have been so cheap. They're really trying to budget themselves there. The first half of the movie is a very triumphant retelling of the Cuban Revolution. I think it's completely inspiring. One scene that really sticks out in my mind for me, and is why I think everyone should buy guns now, is there are all of these campesinos who are coming to the rebels in the forest, and Che is like, "Where's your gun? Do you have a gun? No, you're of no use to me. I'm sorry. Like you'll be a liability." So it's very important. If you guys want to be cool with Che, buy a gun.
We also get to see, in terms of recruiting of the peasants, he wants those who can read. And when he hits the wall of like not enough of these campesinos can read, he starts a literacy school in his guerrilla training camp, which I think is gesturing towards the famous Cuba literacy programs that the revolution would usher, right? When they started, I think the film says 35% of the island was illiterate. And Che says, like, those who can't read and write are easily taken advantage of. These are the famous literacy programs and health programs that would be praised by Bernie Sanders, and this would be lobbed back in his face as they tried to kneecap our elderly Jewish grandfather.
The second half of the film, part 2, a very different tone.
Well, wait. Before we move on to part 2, let's just talk about the ending of part 1.
Okay.
The final scene is they win like their first sort of major urban battle, right? And the Castro forces are melting away, you know, like the American-sponsored government in Afghanistan or something, right? Like, and they're driving to the capital in jeeps, and he like reprimands a fellow officer for driving a stolen car, right? Like a nice luxury car, which I thought was an interesting note to end the movie on, like Che being upset about property rights. But I think part of it is just like the optics of driving this like capitalist prize, you know, into at the front of your revolution.
The second half of the film, part 2, we see Che disappearing from Cuba. He actually meets with Castro and tries to and explains why he has to leave, why he has to continue the revolution. There's a funny scene in the beginning where you see Castro at a party, and he's explaining how best to make a mojito. And you contrast that later with Che becoming emaciated in the jungle. And I think that was like a very slight jab at Castro and what he chose to do, which was not to export revolution, which was actually a Russian policy. I mean, Castro actually took up with Khrushchev and the reformist Marxist ideology, which was not to export revolution anymore. That was part of the huge Sino-Soviet split where Mao was like, no, you can't just stop the revolution at home. You must spread it worldwide. And so Che had a big falling out with Khrushchev and the Soviets. And it's unclear what kind of relationship he had with Castro at that point. I think a lot of that is also apocryphal. But the second movie is about failure. You see Che in the jungles of Bolivia, and there is basically zero success. The most successful part is when Che disguises himself as like some weird bald guy and makes his way through I guess the Bolivian TSA. I don't know what you call that.
Living
And
customs, yeah.
yeah, customs. Thank you. And but subsequently, every single story told in part two is a one failure after another that ultimately leads to Che's death.
Yeah. And there are some pretty affecting moments, I thought, in this part too. I thought one of the best for me was, there is like either a communist or a socialist political party in Bolivia who at first is willing to help him, right? By like, giving them money for food. But I think within like a month of them training to fight militarily, the head of, like the liberal party or the socialist party, whatever it is, shows up in the jungle and he's like wearing like a sweater over his
Yeah,
shoulders and he
he's
looks the
swatting
part
away
of like
bugs. Yeah,
a liberal, and it's like,
yes.
unfortunately, like we're going to pursue, reform without armed violence struggle, right? Like, the party can't be seen condoning violence. And Che is like, you don't understand. Like, without the armed struggle, like you're never going to get what you want. And the guy says, like, listen, I have a wife and kids, right? Like, I don't want to lose that. Um, and I think that moment sort of speaks to, liberal fecklessness, essentially, that like you have nice things, right? You have the sweater over your shoulders. Like, you are not willing to give up anything really for like a revolution is going to require like risking it all to get what you want, right? There's a lot of like,
sacrifice.
Yeah, yeah. And Che says throughout the movie, like, there are two outcomes to this, right? Like, you need to prepare yourself for one of two outcomes, like either death or a successful revolution. And liberals do not like that dichotomy.
No, they like you said, want a violence-free revolution, which I
Mhm.
don't think there's ever been one of those. I can't in history. Um, what I like about this movie, as depressing as it is watching him fail, is he lives what both of these movies show about Che as a person is that he's not sitting behind a desk. He's leading by example. And he says this in his guerrilla warfare book. He says, one of the great educational techniques is example. Therefore, the chiefs must constantly offer the example of a pure and devoted life. Promotion of the soldier should be based in valor, capacity, and a spirit of sacrifice. Whoever does not have these qualities in a high degree ought not to have responsible assignments. And so that's why, again, what makes Che so special is that he had theory. He had his own Marxist theory, which was not unlike Mao's, which was armed revolution. But he was there. He was doing it himself. And I think that that's one thing that we don't see much of anymore in the world is who of our leaders are actually doing something, who aren't just there speaking. I think that's what was so powerful about that photo of Bernie Sanders protesting in the civil rights. He's got his arms scrunched up and those police officers are carrying this nice little Jewish boy away. That, like, I think was a very powerful image. He's no Che, it's no Guerrero Heroico, but I think that we don't really have people. It's so caught up in so much theory, right, instead of action. And Che is the complete opposite.
Yeah, we've said this on our pod where America used to love electing veterans or even generals as president. But if you look at the record of draft dodgers to Vietnam veterans, The draft dodgers are just fucking killing it, man. Like, I think we said in the pod, like, name George W. Bush, George Viet Cong Bush, the way he's beating people who served in Vietnam. Like,
yeah, I mean, Clinton beat George H.W. and I'm not sure if Bob Dole.
Bob Dole was an army guy. Bob Dole served.
Okay, yeah.
That's
So
why his arm's all fucked up.
Bob Dole, Al Gore. Actually, I don't know about Al Gore, but definitely John Kerry.
And John McCain in the primaries went down to W.
True, yeah. And so we Dodgers will always be people who served in the army in America.
The last one was JFK, right? He was the last one to serve.
No, I mean HW did.
HW, you're right.
JFK did have some very funny things to say about the Bay of Pigs, I noticed, where he was like, he kind of felt like pressured into the CIA by doing it, where he afterwards he was like, those fucking guys, like they told me it was all like, you know, I think he told his the next person, like, yeah, don't believe them when they say that it's all like everything's ready to go, you know, it's 100% chance. You know,
the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed. We've handled all the details. Yeah, because they started cooking up the plan under Eisenhower, and this young guy gets elected, and they're like, "Here you go, bud, ready for your signature. Just all good here." And yeah, I mean, we're on Isaac's pod. We got to say it. That's why they killed him, right? It's like he apocryphally said he was going to shatter the CIA into a million pieces and scatter it to the wind. So do with that what you will.
So much like the Motorcycle Diaries, Steven Soderbergh's Che was criticized for, again, not talking about Che's ugly side. Although we should mention that there is an execution scene in part 1 where these three soldiers who were members of the resistance, the guerrillas, absconded with rifles and then pretended to be guerrillas and raped and pillaged local villagers. Che found them, and according to the laws of like being a guerrilla, they were summarily executed. Now, what I find interesting is that they didn't torture them. They like even gave the guy a swig, un trago of rum.
Two swigs,
that's right. And they just shot him, right? Like it was just like one boom, guy's dead. Which I think is like completely reasonable in warfare. I feel like I think every army has a very explicit execution policies of traitors.
Mm-hmm. Man, they were shooting deserters in World War I, like the Americans, the French. Like this is part of warfare.
Also, they are the state. I feel like the criticism you always get from conservatives is like, oh, you know, he was a murderer. And it's like, yeah, well, he was also the state and like responsible for military tribunals, right? Like you're not really grading him on the standards of like a regular person who did this. Like he is the head of the army, right? Like or at least like the tribunal part of it.
And it's always so funny the constant comparisons to both Hitler and Stalin, because Americans have no other historical context besides World War II, I guess. But like
they don't show anything else on the History Channel.
Yeah,
they don't know.
The idea that you would ever dare compare Che to Hitler is so insulting to anyone's intelligence, right? I mean, not just like the sheer scale of actual violence that Hitler committed. And chances are, I don't know if Hitler, after World War I, ever even pulled a fucking trigger, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it'd be like if in 1939 Hitler like went to South Africa to do the fascist revolution there too, or something.
That would be admirable. You see,
one of Che's famous executions of a bandit was that he actually was going to have his soldiers execute the man, but they were all very reluctant to. They didn't want to kill him, so he's like, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll take it upon myself. I'll take on that karmic debt to murder this man for the sake of the revolution." There is no evidence that Che ever took any pleasure in murdering people. I don't think so. To call him a murderer is just unkind to history itself. And then, of course, the way that they murdered Che was torture. They tortured him. I mean, not only did this Bolivian soldier named Terán, he shot him in each of the limbs, so 4 times, and then shot him multiple times in the stomach. Now, allegedly, the United States did not want Che to be murdered because they didn't want him to be a martyr. That there's conflicting reports that they wanted that to happen, but I did find some documents of U.S. officials saying it's regrettable that they murdered him. We would have rather taken him and interrogated him and done whatever else we wanted with him, and eventually murder him. I don't know, but he did turn into the symbol that we know him today. Right after it was revealed that he was murdered. Now, these images aren't as popular as the Guerrero Heroico, but did you guys look at the pictures of Che's dead body after they killed him in Bolivia? Where they have him sprawled out on this table?
I have seen it before, yeah.
He looks like Jesus Christ. I shit you not. If you look at these photos, Che's dead body, he's got these, like, his eyes, his pupils have turned gray at this point. His body is emaciated. There's even, like, a bullet hole, I think on the right side of his rib. Which side was Jesus murdered on? They stabbed him? Remember which side? The left or the right? Either way, there's a open wound on Che's rib cage, and his hair, obviously long and bearded, he looks like Jesus Christ. And so I find that image to be just as powerful. And I think that if you want to talk about 20th century Christ-like figures, people who sacrifice themselves for mankind, I think Che's up there in terms of Christ-like figures.
Yeah, I mean, who else would you put in there? You can't really, if like the criteria are like gave up immense like wealth and comfort in order to help others and died doing it.
Paul Walker.
Also, this is like going back a little bit. Just if you want to talk about wanton cruelty, which is what they charged Che with, turn your gaze inward. I'm thinking of when the CIA overthrew Patrice Lumumba. This is a similar period, right? I forget the exact date. I think it's early 1960s when they overthrow Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. They made this man eat his own beard. And if I recall correctly, they dissolved the body in acid. And when they did some kind of forensic investigation for it, some kind of like way after the fact, all they could produce for his family was a single tooth of Patrice Lumumba. That was us in the Congo, for them having the audacity to nationalize some of their mineral rights or what have you. Like, I don't know.
No, it is insulting. There is no comparison. It doesn't even come close. What the United States wrought in the 20th century and to this very fucking day, nobody holds a fucking candle to this that is a quote unquote leftist. I don't think you can ever make that case. And so, yeah, it should all, whenever some Cuban American says, how dare you, let it fall upon deaf ears. Tell them to shut the fuck up, dude. They cannot be taken seriously, which is why with the PragerU videos, their propaganda saying he was a racist and a homophobe trying to tug at liberal heartstrings. They're doing, the Cuban Americans do the same thing where they try to explain their lived experience to you. Like, their lived experience somehow trumps over all logic, and you have to listen to them being like, that's my country, you don't understand where I came from and what my family had to endure. It's like, they didn't have to endure shit. What are you fucking talking about? All the intelligentsia left, all the middle class left, and took all their wealth and know-how with them, and Cuba was left to completely fend for itself and basically recreate society, which I think is a pretty cool adventure to be a part of.
Se perdió el hombre de este siglo allí, su nombre y su apellido son fusil contra fusil. Se quebró la cáscara del viento al sur y sobre la primera cruz despierta la verdad.
We had the t-shirts, we had the movies, we had the every kind of merch you can imagine with Che's visage on it. Why were the 2000s so full of Che? What was it about the 2000s that made him come back into the zeitgeist? I want to give a quote here from Garcia Bernal, the actor who played Che. Um, he said after doing the Motorcycle Diaries, the role crystallized his own sense of duty because Guevara decided to live on the side of the mistreated, to live on the side of the people who have no justice and no voice. And surmising the similarities between his transformation and Guevara's, Garcia Bernal posits that, quote, my generation is awakening, and we're discovering a world full of incredible injustice, end quote. That quote, that made me really like try to remember the 2000s, right? And that, what was there revolutionary fervor, you think? What was it that was going on that made these movies about Che, these images of Che so popular?
Like I said earlier, I think for me, I mean, it just speaks to like the lack of options available, right? Like I think of some of the revolutionary songs of the 2000s, like John Mayer's Waiting on the World to Change, you know, songs that were essentially just like, yeah, I can't even imagine how this might be better. You know, like
Uh-huh.
this stinks. We're 15 years into the end of history. There are no options in front of us. And so I think Che is just like an icon to them because it's like, well, this guy fought in a losing struggle and died doing it. And so there is like something to be admired there, uh, and something to look up to. And it is funny how much he pissed conservatives off, right? Like you sent me a plethora of articles from people, you know, who are so upset that like Carlos Santana had worn like what was it? He wore a Che Guevara t-shirt to like the
Yeah.
Grammys or something, right?
No, it was to I think the Oscars because of the Motorcycle Diaries.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so all of these people being forced to apologize for, you know, like wearing Che iconography to the Oscars, right? They're basically wearing a Hitler t-shirt to the Oscars. Like I was gonna say it could be transgressive at a time where there was like very little to look forward to.
Yeah, I think it is wrapped up in the sense that there are no contemporary revolutionary role models to look to, or at least it felt that way. I know it's probably not actually true. When I was preparing for this episode, I remember a story about a El Salvadorian environmental activist that was murdered. I believe she was indigenous, she was an environmental activist, murdered by the state. I couldn't remember her name. I learned about her from like a DSA calendar that I had at one point, embarrassingly enough. And I remember, and so I looked up like El Salvadorian activist murdered by the state. And the Google AI overview gave me dozens of people from the 2000s and 2010s. Like, there is always good revolutionary work happening. But I think for people in America, if they don't know about what is actually going on in the global south and they don't have some contemporary left figure that they can glom onto, they will look to the past and they will look to this inspirational story from the past in Che as some kind of symbol of revolutionary action, of selflessness, of affecting a major change that stuck. How many other attempted Latin American revolutions were there over the course of the Cold War that were overthrown at the butt of a gun sponsored by the CIA? This is like the one that worked. This is the David and Goliath story. It's inspirational. I think it comes from that kind of hopelessness. We talked about fucking what's the stupid book that everyone... Oh, we talked about Mark Fisher with you like years ago now. I think it was one of our first collaborations. We talked a little bit about Mark Fisher. And so, yeah, if there is no future, you look to the past. Also, Rage Against the Machine in the 90s, banger, They produced banger after banger, and they put his shit all over their amps and whatnot.
The timing of these movies, and again, it's hard to place these T-shirts because they're not official. I think 2006 Converse put him on one of their All-Stars is the only like official one that I could see that was mass produced. But the Che shirts, they were actually at Urban Outfitters until 2012 when some whiny Cuban American was just like, yeah, hit.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know. But otherwise, again, because this image, it would be copyrighted eventually by the Corda estate, the photographer who took it. But they said anybody can use it as long as they don't use it for like tobacco, alcohol, perfumes was one. Although of course it's not a Japanese company, but in Japan you can buy the Che cigarettes, which are ass, by the way. They taste so bad, so don't even bother smoking it. But they do come in menthol.
Yeah, if he had a menthol cigarette instead of a cigar, I don't know if it would have gone quite as well for him.
Which is funny because like I hate cigars. I think that like the only people who smoke cigars today are big fat Italian wannabes. Nobody cool smokes cigars anymore. I think cigarettes are cool. Cigarettes are proletarian, and I think you do look cool as hell smoking them. Yeah, we need a Che Don Draper, something like that. But these movies, I gotta say that the sentiment, the revolutionary sentiment, or the Che's popularity, I think it did come out of also a disaffectedness with the American war on terror and Iraq and Afghanistan. I feel like that has to. I feel like he was a countervailing a notion, like a very vague notion that American imperialism is bad, because that's what Che stands for. And I think that's what PragerU likes to say. It's like he is just a symbol of anti-Americanness. And that was the one thing that they did get right.
Yeah, and I think it's no accident that these films come out towards the end of the decade, because as we've said many, many times on our show, post 9/11, early war on terror, George W. Bush, 90-something% approval rating. War in Iraq has a 70-something% approval rating. People were just baying for blood, rabid dogs of Americanism. But as it starts to unravel, as you see the torture programs and the black sites and the catastrophe that was the Iraq War, I think you start to see a little bit of that anti-Americanism starting to kick up, and the normal rhetorical tricks that the right will use against it just aren't landing anymore. I remember when Obama was first running, some of these right-wing talk shows tried to make hay out of the fact that he was hanging out with David Ayers, one of the Weatherman bombers, and like that just couldn't stick. Like, who gives a shit, man?
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Obama, I think that he is, I think, the closest thing we have to a Che in the 2000s, which is a very depressing thing to say. Because he did offer that he's handsome, he was cool, he smoked cigarettes actually, and he does look pretty cool smoking cigarettes, but and especially that fucking Shepard Fairey poster, I think really sealed the deal that all that revolutionary fervor that was beginning to percolate, that maybe would have actually changed the course of human history, was all funneled into this faux Che Guevara, Barack Obama. And so I can't help but think that was whether it was by design or just by accident, a brilliant way of capturing what the people were really hungering for, which was a principled character to look up to and to follow. I think we do really need that. And fuck Obama, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, did you know that Obama, when he was living in Hawaii, he was given $15 by a girl she said, if you ever make it to the mainland, I want you to buy me a bathing suit. And Obama, he actually held on to the money for 8 years until he gave it to Jeffrey Katzenberg, actually, who needed a new blood boy. So,
yeah,
very similar style of guy.
Absolutely. But now unless you guys have anything else you want to say about Obama in the 2000s and Che.
Yeah, I do actually. Okay, so you sent us a pretty interesting clip of Stephen Colbert during the Occupy movement, there is sort of like a revolutionary feeling in young people in New York City. People are feeling so upset. I've been preparing for a financial crisis episode, and I think this is probably like the richest ground we've ever had in like the last 40 years for any kind of like revolution or reform or anything, right? And the reason we hate Obama is because he took all of that potential and turned it into nothing, right? Um, and so I think it's a very interesting point because you have these like Wall Street executives who have been making. I'm looking at some of their salaries. It's insane. Like Dick Fuld, the guy who ran Lehman Brothers into the ground, had made something like $600 million working at Lehman Brothers. Right? Like this is what
Jordan,
we're
you got to
paying.
remember, $600 million before taxes. Okay.
Yeah, right. And we know that like they took bailout money, and the first thing they did was like, we got to make sure our executives are paid their bonuses, or else people will leave, right? Which is like what they always say about the bourgeois during a revolution. It's like, well, we can't have all the rich people leave, right? But it's like we saw that happen with public money, and Obama turned that into like whatever the fuck he did with it. But I love that sort of feeling in Zuccotti Park where people are like, listen, like we're upset. We want some change. And Stephen Colbert goes down there dressed as Che Guevara and is dunking on them, right? Like he's ordering champagne to the hotel room where the interview is so that they can have like champagne. Like he's doing the champagne socialist joke. And we came on your show to talk about Stephen Colbert. And I remember saying like, oh, apparently there are conservatives who watch him and don't take it as a satire, and they like just think it's a good show, right? Like if you can take him, a good satire is something that you could take sincerely and also enjoy. And now I get it. Like I could see a conservative watching a Colbert Report bit like that and being like, yeah, he's owning them, right? Like I finally understand why someone might sincerely watch the Colbert Report and being like, he's making some good points.
Well, because he is a conservative, and I
Right.
can only imagine. I would love to know what Stephen Colbert has to say about Che Guevara. Um, I can't imagine it's very revolutionary. Um, but now we're in the 2020s, and things have only gotten worse. And so I'm trying to think. It does feel like revolutionary times. Like we are in a sort of proto-revolutionary moment in the world, and who knows if it's happening right now underneath our feet, and we're just dumb Americans and we don't see it. But I was trying to think about who is both the Che Guevara of today and what images also are as evocative as the Che the icon. And I was wondering if you guys had any ideas. I have a couple.
Matt Crispin.
Not
I
handsome
don't know. I
enough.
mean, I
Sorry,
think
Matt.
when you say we're revolutionary, like I think things keep getting worse. Income inequality keeps getting worse, and you really do get this notion where they're like, let's just see how far we can take this, right? Like we know that the top 1% own a significant portion of the wealth, and somehow like the gap gets wider. And there doesn't seem to be any interest in like the government in at least like stopping the gap from getting wider. And so I do agree with you in the sense that like, well, if things keep getting worse, like surely people will be upset enough to do some kind of revolution.
Or at least like maybe in the 2000s, in the middle of the 2000s, when people were looking at Che again, uh, we will start doing that now. I mean, the similarities between the war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan and now the war in Iran, a deeply unpopular president, we're going to have something akin to the financial crisis again very soon, whether it's with crypto or housing or Airbnbs, I don't know what.
I have three Che's for you, actually. First,
Okay.
obviously, Luigi Mangione.
Yes.
He's got the violence, he's got the looks, he's got the martyrdom. Second, you have Edward Snowden, right? Also a martyr, fought in like sort of American espionage. Third, Michael Moore at the Oscars in 2004.
Interesting you just picked a bunch of white guys, Giordano. Okay.
Yeah, I hope we get someone, but I think you're right, Isaac, that it's bad and it's about to get much worse. Like, I think the Iran war is going to absolutely crater the global economy in some significant ways. And I think in a similar way to Iraq, where it was able to propel someone like Obama over Hillary Clinton because he had opposed this unpopular war very early on, and he was able to use that as a cudgel against her. I don't think whoever the Democratic nominee is, I don't think we know their name yet. I don't think they're a mainstream person. I don't know. This is me maybe calling my shot, but like, I don't think it's Gavin Newsom. I don't think it's AOC. I think it's going to be someone that we're not thinking or talking about. And hopefully we don't just run the entire Obama script back where there'll be like this massive mandate to do something pretty revolutionary. Like, I think like I want whoever's running. This is like such a fucking technocratic dork thing to say. And I realize that, but like, I want someone to talk about fucking supply chains at some point. Like, I want someone to talk about, this is what Isaac and I were talking about before recording. Like, I want someone to talk about how fucked it is that our canned fruits are shipped across the Pacific Ocean twice before we buy them. Like, I want someone to actually think about some of these things for the sake of the climate, for the sake of employment, whatever. Like, I want someone with a vision of a radically restructured economy, and hopefully this like very bad thing that is happening now can be the goad for this mystery person that we don't know. Or it'll be Gavin Newsom, or it'll be gruesome Gavin, and I'm wrong.
I think you're missing the point of this, which is armed struggle, revolutionary struggle. Why are you talking about electoral politics here?
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. My internet cut out where I think this is like the interesting moment that we're in, where I think like the biggest reason Americans don't like get out in the streets and embrace violence or even like forget violence, even like a general strike or anything of that nature, is that we are placated by treats, right? Like, we are kept just comfortable enough with our like Amazon 2-day deliveries. Even though housing and education and healthcare are completely fucked, we're kept in this perfect equilibrium where we can at least be mostly comfortable most of the time. And like, maybe America will make me eat my words if the treat conveyor belt is stopped by this Iran war. Maybe then America can prove me wrong with some radical action. But like, outside of like fucking Portland, like I'm sorry, Isaac, I just like, I don't believe in the American people in their ability for armed struggle.
I don't either. I mean, did you guys see that video of I don't know if they're Antifa, but they're anti-ICE protesters, and they pushed down the gate to the ICE facility in Portland, Oregon? Did you see that?
Cool.
And then they just stood there. They wouldn't. Here's what happened. They pushed the gate over, and they stood there and just kept saying, "Fuck you, man, fuck you," and didn't ever cross the line. So they pushed the gate down, but there was still an invisible gate there that prevented them from going into the facility and doing I don't know what. I think I'm going to do this for a book club where we all have to read Che Guevara's Guerrilla Handbook and see, does this apply today? Can this work today? I also agree with Giordano that Luigi Mangione is unfortunately the like closest thing we have to a Che in modern times. And I think that has to do largely with like his mimesis. I think that as a mimetic icon, he is more like Che because you see his handsome face everywhere. But I really think that the character that at least I think is a more closely modern day Che is Yahya Sinwar, and his death, the capturing of his death. Now it's not as like pretty because you see him just like missing an arm and slumped over, but that last act of like throwing something at a drone while he was fighting in Gaza, it's like that's Che right there. Yahya Sinwar has the spirit of Che, and they will levy the same criticisms against Sinwar as they did against Che, which is that he's a murderer. He's a murderer. And then hopefully we'll get to the point where people realize like that's not a criticism of a political actor. You can't just call them a murderer and think that that's all you have to do to dismiss their project and their ideology and their action.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking of the anti-Palestinian rhetoric when I was watching those PragerU videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
They love to say, like, they throw gay people off the rooftops in Gaza. And it's like, how many gay Palestinians has Israel probably executed?
Right.
Right.
Iran hates women. Iran hates. It's like, when is this lazy propaganda going to fall on deaf ears? Is what I wanna know.
Iran hates women, and for our opening move of this chess game of a war, we will be bombing a girls' school.
Twice.
Checkmate.
Twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
Checkmate, Ayatollahs.
And the Khamenei's death, I think, is also they're like, why he was so stupid to go to this building where we knew we could bomb him. It's like, you don't think he knew that's what he was getting himself into? You don't think he purposely put himself in that building to be murdered? I think that, and that's why I don't think you're going to have very many American Che's, is because I think Americans are also complete chicken shit, myself included, like being afraid of dying. I think that people are, Glenn Greenwald's fucking teal bucks paid ass. I fucking hate Glenn Greenwald. He's pushing forth Tucker Carlson as the next president of the United States because he's so principled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Carlson's afraid of death. He is so afraid of dying. So we need somebody who is like genuinely like, I'll fucking die. I will die for this. And until Americans get to that point, you're right. As long as there's a 2-day delivery, they're not going to die yet.
Mm-hmm.
Luigi, his asthma, that's like his back problem.
Exactly. No, and you have Aaron Bushnell, I think, is another character who, one of the very rare Americans who will sacrifice himself for such a cause. So yeah, I don't know what that's gonna look like, and I was also very discouraged by a lot of supposed leftists who were criticizing Aaron Bushnell, saying, "Oh, it didn't change anything." It's like, that's not. You shouldn't worry about. I think that's the whole point. That's the hard thing to do. Is you shouldn't worry about if it's going to change anything, because you won't know. You can't know. You just have to do it. I'm not telling everyone to burn themselves alive, by the way, but I would respect you if you did.
God damn it.
I think the other thing that maybe this will be like the last closing thoughts, unless you guys have it. This is my closing thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when people think of communists today, when people think of Marxists or leftists, they think of what blue-haired, gender confused, whatever, which is those people are fine. I don't care. But as an avatar for a movement, I would prefer someone a little different. And I think that that's what the Cuban Revolution and Che did so well, was they were so fucking cool looking. They were so handsome. They're so beautiful. And that's, I think, what we need to move into. And Hassan Piker is not going to fucking die for us, okay? So don't look to him either. But what we need are very handsome people who are willing to put their lives on the line.
Yeah, I think the handsomeness is less important than the fact that Che, he was sleeping on the ground for years.
The
right?
toughness factor. The toughness factor. Wear some fucking combat boots. Wear some fucking military fatigues. Do the thing.
Don't be annoying, I think is one of the main lessons I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I love this history. I think it's fascinating. It's inspiring. It's romantic. All those things. And when I look at what this country has done to Cuba for the past 60 years and continues to do, I think in the moral tally of America's crimes, the feud against Cuba, probably in the top 10, I think, easily. There was a word coined in the 19th century for the inherited feud between France and Germany that is descended from generation to generation, called Erbfeindschaft. This idea that the Germans and French will always go to war. It's just what we do. And there is a one-sided Erbfeindschaft between America and Cuba. America cannot let this grudge go from 60 fucking years ago. Like, doesn't matter if the Soviet Union fell, the blockade stays up. Doesn't matter. The Soviet Union's been gone almost 30 years now. Overthrew Venezuela, the
35.
main source of energy for Cuba. Blockade staying up, motherfuckers. We're gonna like starve this fucking place. It's unconscionable.
It's truly that scene from the end of The Irishman where they're like, who are you protecting anymore? Like, everybody's dead. Everybody's gone. Like, it was everybody involved in the original feud is gone. And America just still has this posture. Another thing by the way, Obama sort of took a half measure on, where he's like, I'm going to go over there. I remember in 2016 when I was there, he was making his trip. But it's like, just fucking do it. Enough with the gestures. And like, if you want to change something, do it. He said he would close Guantanamo Bay. He didn't do it. He said he would like end the feud with Cuba. He didn't do it. Right? Yeah.
No, it's continually disappointing. And yeah, again, I think we can end the note on just fuck Obama, right? That's a good note to end on.
Yeah, but I think you called the Motorcycle Diaries like your favorite sort of like leftist or communist movie, and I agree. If you want to watch a based movie, check out the Motorcycle Diaries. Very good and inspiring figure, Che Guevara.
And if you want to check out a based podcast, Remember Shuffle.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Isaac's been on many times. He was last on Invictus, another sort of geopolitical history episode, if you're interested in South Africa. We just put out an American Psycho episode that many people are saying is very, very good. So check that one out. Isaac's been on for The Daily Show. He's been on for The Sopranos.
He came on for our 50th episode, I think. Either 50th or 100th.
Right. 50th, yeah.
50th, yeah. He came on for our 50th episode, a big milestone episode where we talked about the 2000 election. It was a marathon episode, but it's a banger, the one that they stole. And the Cubans are involved.
That's true. Elian Gonzalez is in that one, right? Mm-hmm. True. So yeah, check out that one, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good starter. Remember,
just check out all of them. I mean, I'm sure that our overlap is almost like completely flush at this point. But for those of you who aren't already paid subscribers, I can't emphasize that enough. Paying subscribers to Remember Shuffle, you're missing out.
I got a good one. And if you're into Isaac's sort of like para-political approach to the world, definitely check out the 9/11 conspiracy theories episode that he came on for. That one also rocks.
We
watched Che Guevara figure Michael Moore's documentary Fahrenheit 9/11 for that one, as well as Loose Change, a classic.
Yeah. All right, brothers. Hasta la Victoria. Pasta la Victoria siempre. That's like going to be my new noodle company.
Adios, amigos.